Hello, good afternoon everyone. My name is Justin Simaluk. I'm the president of Rail for Alberta. We're a volunteer-run, nonpartisan society advocating for the establishment of urban, regional, and intercity rail service in Alberta. I want to thank you all for joining us here at Heritage Park, one of the few places left in Alberta where you can still reliably catch a train, to hear from the Premier and the Minister of Transportation of Economic Corridors on their plan for passenger rail service in Alberta. Rail for Alberta was established in 2020 with a desire for Albertans to have more choice in how they get around our province. Provincial rails making a resurgence, passenger rails making a resurgence in Canada and in the United States. As populations grow, governments recognize the potential for rail to connect cities, towns, and drive economic growth. There's many benefits to passenger rail. It provides an efficient way for people to travel. It helps fight congestion on highways. It has the potential to boost economic activity. It's safe, clean, and quiet. Quite frankly, it's just a pleasant way to get around, and we look forward to the day that taking the train can be a part of life for everyday Albertans. Alberta's ready for passenger rail, and we're excited to hear from the Premier and the Minister about how they plan to get the train out of the station. So without further ado, let me turn it over to the Honourable Premier Danielle Smith.
Thank you for that introduction, and good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I know that we've got some ministers as well as MLAs in attendance. Minister Mickey Amory, I think I just saw Minister Matt Jones come in the door, MLA Andrew Boychenko, MLA Grant Hunter, MLA Brendan Lunty, MLA Garth Rosewell, Minister R.J. Sigurdsson, and I think I saw MLA Eric Bouchard also come through the door. Thank you all for being here. I'm also pleased to be joined here with Devin Dreeshen, Alberta's Minister of Transportation and Economic Corridors, as well as Chris Dinsdale, the President and CEO of the Calgary Airport Authority, and Justin Simaluk, who is President of the Rail for Alberta Society. Today, we're in one of Calgary's landmarks, Heritage Park, a monument to the past, to talk about the future. Everyone recognizes that our province is growing rapidly. Last year, Alberta's population rose by more than 202,000 people. This is the fastest annual growth rate since 1981 and the highest among all the provinces. Thanks to rich resources, low taxes, a diversified economy, and lots of jobs, we expect that newcomers will continue flooding into Alberta. It's a tremendous blessing, but it brings challenges too, including mobility. Those of us who commute regularly already see and experience our province's busy roads and highways. Unlike Federal Environment Minister Stephen Guilbeault, we are willing to invest in those roads as well, but they aren't the only answer. Expanding our roads, freeways, and highways to be 6 or 8 or 10 lanes all the way across is not always feasible, nor is it always wise. In addition to our extensive road system, a more densely populated province will need a mobility system that supports our growing population with a fast, safe, and reliable choice of transportation that also meets our goals of reducing emissions. I'm happy to announce that Alberta's government is moving forward with a passenger rail master plan to prepare the ground for such a system and connect Albertans better than ever before. Rail system networks are a reliable fact of life in Eastern Canada and the United States and all across Europe, moving people easily, quickly, and safely around their busiest municipal hubs. And yet here in Alberta, we've been behind for decades. Edmonton and Calgary have been building out and growing their municipal LRT systems, which enable residents to move easily to get across town, but there's still gaps that exist. And that biggest gap is that neither city has a line to connect residents and tourists to either the Calgary or Edmonton international airports from the downtown. That's why Budget 2024 includes funding for an airport connector to Calgary. But just looking at commuter rail within our biggest cities is too small a vision for us. We want to connect more than just neighborhoods. We have a bigger, bolder vision. We want to build stronger connections along Alberta's busiest corridor and to Alberta's top tourist destination. I mentioned the lack of rail connections to Alberta's 2 primary airports from the downtown core, but we're looking into more than that. We don't want to leave those in surrounding communities on the outside of these mobility solutions. Consider Calgary, where many hardworking Albertans commute daily from nearby communities like Airdrie and Okotoks. Anyone who makes that daily commute or is traveling at the same time as the hundreds making that commute know that resulting traffic jams and backlogs only serve to add more stress to a day before it has even begun. And that doesn't need to be the case. We see the value in a commuter passenger line that connects folks in those communities to the Calgary Airport and then on to the downtown core, in the case of Airdrie, for a more streamlined and relaxed commute. And we believe that a solution like that will also work in Edmonton and the entire capital region. That is the starting point. But we also want to open up direct access to our breathtaking and adventure-rich national parks. We are a growing visitor economy. And as our Minister of Tourism and Sport, Joseph Scow, has mentioned a lot recently, our tourism industry has more than recovered from the pandemic. Tourism spending is significantly higher than it was in 2019. But again, we have a vision for an even stronger, bigger tourism industry. And our efforts to grow the visitor economy in our province will be helped by developing a passenger rail line from Calgary to the heart of our national parks. We know that passenger rail lines through the mountains are very popular and provide passengers with views and experiences they cannot duplicate in a car or truck or bus or plane. But right now, those experiences end in Banff and Jasper without regular and simple connections to our major cities. There's an opportunity here that we would be foolish to disregard. Another opportunity should not be cast aside is that of a high-speed passenger rail line connecting Edmonton and Calgary with a stopover in the midpoint in Red Deer. Passenger rail between these three cities offers more opportunity, not just for visitors to our province and those looking to visit family and friends. It is an opportunity for business people who want to work the convenience of a quick trip, the ability to get work done on the way, and the possibility of avoiding lengthy airport security processes. Not to mention, I've already challenged Red Deer to look at becoming our next million-person city. And so a great new way for us to grow out the affordable housing in central Alberta. This is all part of our 15-year plan. This is a vision for the future. In Alberta, we have never been content with small dreams. We have long been known as a province of innovators and entrepreneurs for a reason, and today's no different. We are still a province of innovators, entrepreneurs, and visionaries. It's true in our energy industry, in our technology and innovation industry, in our film and television industry, and now it's also true in our transportation industry. Minister Dreeshen and his team have been relentlessly pursuing the information and partnerships needed to make this vision a reality. Nothing about this plan is going to be unilateral. It will take shape only after consultations with municipalities, with industry, with Indigenous communities, and all Albertans interested in the future of passenger rail. A large and efficient passenger rail network stretching across the province has incredible potential. It will improve daily life and work, boost the economy, and take away the stress of long-distance travel. The system will be transformative if it is planned and built with care and with foresight. And now I will turn it over to Minister Devin Dreeshen to tell you more.
Well, thank you very much. And I know Premier Smith highlighted our provincially elected officials, but we also have Calgary City Councillor Chabot here as well. So thank you so much for joining us here and for everyone here today. And I'm honored to stand with Premier Smith to share the details of Alberta's vision for passenger rail with our Alberta Passenger Rail Master Plan. So to break it down, there's 6 parts to this plan. There is obviously the commuter rail from Edmonton's downtown to their airport and their surrounding communities. Also, commuter rail from Calgary's downtown to their airport, as well as surrounding communities. A high-speed rail from Edmonton to Calgary with a stop in Red Deer. To review regional rail from Banff and Jasper. A regional rail from Fort McMurray to Grand Prairie, as well as to southern Alberta communities. And essentially a rail hub, which will connect the existing LRTs that are in Edmonton and Calgary and every single aspect to this entire network. So the vision includes a province-led agency with a mandate to develop the infrastructure and oversee the daily operations, fare collection and booking system, maintenance and planning for future expansion. So this is an ambitious vision, to say the least, but so is Alberta. This master plan will look forward decades and will identify concrete actions that can be taken now to build the optimal passenger rail network for Alberta. As part of the master plan, our government will engage a wide variety of stakeholders, including Albertans, to gain their perspectives. The input received throughout the development of the master rail plan is critical to its success. The master plan will provide government with evidence-based information to make decisions that will have a massive impact over the coming decades. Today, we also announced a request for expression of interest for world-class detailed development of a master rail plan, which is expected to be completed by next summer. The development of a province-wide master plan will examine the feasibility of a commuter rail service and other potential intercity rail connections. The master plan will provide information needed to inform government decisions, including a comprehensive feasibility assessment and a cost-benefit analysis that will identify what elements of a passenger rail system should proceed and when. The plan will identify triggers for implementing infrastructure development such as population and ridership, as well as the optimal staging and expansion of the system as our population grows. It will also identify financial and delivery model options to consider the role of the private sector, the public sector, or a hybrid option. The plan will also assess governance options to develop and operate Alberta's passenger rail system. The master plan will include a 15-year delivery plan, which will provide clear options to government to lay out the next steps for government to turn this vision into a reality. Now, Alberta already has significant LRT systems in Edmonton and Calgary. In addition to Alberta's $3 billion commitment to support the LRT expansion in Calgary and Edmonton, our government has dedicated $43 million in new funding as part of this year's budget to support Calgary's Blue Line LRT expansion towards the Calgary International Airport, and funding to study the last leg of the Blue Line to finally connect all the way to the Calgary Airport. But this project will extend the existing Blue Line LRT to 88th Avenue, providing LRT service to Northeast Calgary. So ultimately, during this development of this long-term strategy that we're announcing here today, we look forward to hearing from Albertans and working with municipalities, Indigenous communities, and the private sector on this vision. It is the start of a historic idea that will make Alberta the best place to live, work, and raise a family for generations to come. Thank you, and I'd like to invite Chris Dinsdale, the President and CEO of the Calgary International Airport, to the podium. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Dreeshen, and good afternoon, everyone. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Heritage Park for hosting us here today. As one of the many beautiful attractions here in Calgary, we're excited to have recently welcomed the Heritage Park into our terminal at the arrivals level to celebrate their 60th year of operation. On the theme of partnership, I'd like to thank Premier Smith and also Minister Dreeshen for the continued dedication and partnership as we work together to advance our amazing region and province. As you know and feel, Calgary and the province of Alberta is experiencing tremendous growth. Families are moving here, businesses are starting here, and in the case of YYC, tourists are visiting here. This is evident in our record-breaking passenger numbers of 18.5 million in 2023, and is seen in our growth models as we look forward through the years to come. Well, growth like this we are experiencing is a testament to the hard work that the province has done to attract business, new residents, and tourists. It also brings a great need for transportation solutions. That's why I'm proud to be here today to support the province of Alberta as they aim to further identify rail solutions that will meet the needs of our growing province. From an airport perspective, rail would dramatically alter how transportation to and from our beautiful cities and regions enables travelers to experience our province. This is undoubtedly something that will impact many, many stakeholders. And that's why plans like this are vital to ensuring that infrastructure is built and built right and done with all the stakeholders in mind. That brings me to exactly where I started, which is partnership. YYC is excited to be able to continue our contribution to this work for the benefit of our community. There has been and continues to be great cooperation between all involved, and we look forward to this continuing. Ensuring sustainable growth in our province and our cities will require all hands on deck and countless conversations as we move forward. Today is a critical step in doing just that, as we find innovative solutions to better connect those who make this region home, or as a destination to make lasting memories. Thank you.
We'll now enter the media Q&A portion of this announcement. We'll start off here with questions in the room, and then we'll make our way to the phones. We'll be going with one question, one follow-up today, and please state your name and outlet before asking your questions. And with that, we'll go to our first at the mic here.
Hi, Premier.
Hi.
Adam McVicker with Global News in Calgary. 2014 was a decade ago. There was a report done by the Standing Committee looking at Alberta's economic future. It mentioned that while the commuter rail between Calgary and Edmonton was a good idea, it wasn't feasible at the time. It would have required 10 million users a year. I know it's been a decade, but what has changed in your government's eyes to suggest moving forward with a plan like this is so important?
Well, one thing is that we're approaching 5 million, and we're continuing to see a growth trajectory, once again, that has returned us to the kind of growth that we had in the 1980s. But part of it is taking this in pieces and doing the things that make the most sense right now. When I visited the Metrolinx in Ontario, one of the things that they told me in that very first commuter line they did between Oakville and Pickering, they established that in, I think it was 1968, when the Toronto area was 1.6 million people. So we're kind of in that zone in both the Edmonton area and the Calgary area, which is why we want to look at the pieces that make the most sense right off the hop. I would put it to you as well, seeing what has happened in other major cities like Vancouver, that I think there's an expectation for tourists that when they arrive at the airport, they should be able to efficiently get downtown with rail. So as the minister mentioned, there's 6 pieces to the plan. I suspect that the commuter rail is the one that is more feasible immediately, followed by, or in addition to, the airport lines. And then we'll have to get some advice on when it's feasible to build it out between Calgary and Edmonton airports. But I'll see if the minister wants to add to that.
Yeah, no, great question. And from previous studies to this study, I think that the biggest change is it's looking in a holistic view. So it's not just one project and is it viable, is it not? It's connecting 2 regional lines out to our national parks for a heavy tourism play, as well as the commuter area around not just Edmonton and Calgary, but the communities surrounding, 13 communities surrounding by Edmonton and the communities surrounded by Calgary. So it is this vision, or this plan is a holistic plan that's never been studied in all the different pieces together. So I think it'll be interesting to see, obviously with new technologies, new train proposals coming in, and the governance model that we're also reviewing. The sequencing question is a simple question, but I think this expression of interest that we're doing to have global consultants look into the entire province of Alberta and all these different rail networks being connected, kind of like a nervous system, how they can be connected together, we'll find that in the following year.
And I see the timeline there has construction in 2027. Would that be just the Calgary Airport line? What would the 2027 be?
So again, the sequencing, it's going to depend. So in our standpoint, if we can get this plan, we can actually then go after the year of the blueprint that we're designing here today. Then we're going to have private industry proponents on the regional lines putting towards their priorities or their plan, their train essentially, in this master plan and how it would fit together and how it would be pieced together. And then from there, if there are any provincial construction dollars, is kind of that budget 26 time period, and then construction as soon, best case scenario will be by 2027.
Thanks. Sean Poles at Western Standard. As Adam said, there's been a lot of talk about it in the past. People have been talking about this like literally for decades. So why now? And what was the actual impetus for putting together a whole platform?
I'll again let the minister answer, but we have an unsolicited bid process, and there were several different proposals that came in through that process from different private operators, one to Banff, one between Calgary and Edmonton. There was a Hyperloop, and we got to thinking, what happens about how do these all integrate together? Who's going to lead the discussions talking to the City of Calgary and the City of Edmonton? Who's going to lead the discussions talking to CN and CP about using the right-of-way? How are we going to solve the problem of the choke point getting into downtown? It seemed to us that was really only us who could do it. It requires provincial initiative to do that. But the other part is just looking at where other cities were at the same stage of development. It seemed to me that the commuter rail was the obvious step for us to take. The GO train, for instance, has been getting commuters into downtown Toronto for some time. I was fortunate to get a tour when I was there last summer, and I think that's when I came back and talked to Minister Dreeshen about would now be the time for us to initiate a broader discussion. That was part of it. The other part is that different governments have been building pieces of it. So if you talk to the Airport Authority, there is already some of the areas scoped out for exactly this type of project, including the LRT being expanded out. Premier Stelmach set aside land for different parcels potentially for stations as we're assembling the land. So I think that different successive governments have developed pieces of this, but it seemed bringing it all together is going to be something that only we could do as a province. Minister?
And again on the why, we look at obviously going to 6 lanes on Highway 2, adding 6 lanes to the ring roads in Edmonton and Calgary. We just recently completed 6 lanes on the Anthony Henday from the southwest portion of it. So we constantly review our existing road network and the billions of dollars that we spend obviously to keep up with our growing population. But it is something that to have passenger rail part of that network, that transportation network link, is something that successive governments, as the Premier just said, have looked at, and it's something that we're continuing to look at to see if we can alleviate road congestion by having a passenger rail network that obviously can just make life better both on the rails and on the road.
I think on the Banff proposal that came out a couple months ago, a few weeks ago, they were talking about using hydrogen in the locomotives. Does any of that play into this? And if so, what kind of dollars would the province be prepared to commit?
Well, I sure hope so, because we've already committed dollars to build the hydrogen engine for CP, which I had the pleasure of being on a train on Friday where they brought out all the different iterations of their engine models. So they had the steam engine with 3,800 horsepower, 2 diesel engines, 2,000 horsepower each, and their hydrogen engine has 3,000 horsepower. Their next iteration, they intend to build one that's 4,000 horsepower. So I think that we've already, in partnership with them, proved out that hydrogen works for freight, and then being able to showcase that ideally in a passenger rail service, I think that would be absolutely optimal for projecting to the world the kind of image that we want people to see Alberta, that we're at the forefront of technology, that we're continuing to invest in cleaner and cleaner fuels, and that we're also going to be building a network that is going to not only serve the local passenger traffic, but also tourism. Did you want to comment, Minister? Because it's in your writing, right?
That's a very good segue. No, with CP, they actually in Biltons in Innisfail, they're actually retrofitting their diesel locomotives to make sure that they are hydrogen ready. So I think it is something that this CP initiative, they're looking into this, and obviously the jobs and the hydrogen essentially roadmap that the province has been going on with natural gas being converted to hydrogen and that value add for our natural gas that we have here in Alberta. It's a win-win to see that type of manufacturing happen here in the province.
Hi, Premier Jason Marksoff from CBC. With Bill 20, you allow corporations and unions to donate again to municipalities. So it's not just third parties. It's the same system right now in the provincial government. Are you looking to reintroduce corporate donations and union donations into the provincial fray as well?
We're having a conversation about it. I'll be interested in hearing what the feedback is. But part of the reason to remove corporate and union donations was supposed to be to take big money out of politics. And I don't think it's worked, in fact. I think that the PACs aren't very transparent. I think that there's very high contribution limits to the PACs as well. I think, in fact, it's exacerbated the problem of having more big money and less oversight. And so we are trying to build the right balance in being able to have all parties participate, and we'll see how that goes with the municipal elections. But I would say that the experiment of PACs hasn't been overwhelmingly successful if you wanted to take big money out of politics.
Bill 20 would also have allowed you to come in and quash municipal bylaws on plastic bans, and you've been very critical of those. Would you have used that power to quash those bylaws if you had the power?
Well, I can tell you where we have had to step in just recently. We stepped in to indicate to the City of Calgary that the way they charge their local access fees is out of step with the way we regulate every other municipality, and so we've created legislation to be able to correct that. If the power existed in the Municipal Government Act, we might have been able to address that earlier. I would also say that we have used that power before when it came to masking mandates. We had gone in a different direction when it came to masking, and the City of Edmonton wanted to maintain it, and so we also did pass legislation in order to create a different approach. So I would say that we have already had that ability. We would use it very sparingly. But that is just creating a few more guidelines and parameters around it.
But sorry to clarify, that is one of the uses you would have used it for on that plastics bylaw.
I didn't say that. I gave you two examples.
Clarify what you would do with that.
Well, I did say I gave you two examples of where we did use it. So I think that gives you an example of the kind of thing that causes us concern at the municipal level. And so we would use it very sparingly, but we want to make sure that municipalities are not creeping into provincial jurisdiction, and that they're also not enacting policy that are out of step with the kind of policies that we're trying to implement at the provincial level. And those were two examples.
Premier Bill Graveland from Canadian Press. You were talking about feedback on Bill 20. Alberta municipalities sent out a release last week. They're having another news conference today. Are you concerned that there seems to be some people concerned?
Well, look, I mean, we did consult on a number of issues, and one of the things that we knew in opening up the Municipal Government Act is that we wanted to make a bunch of changes, and so we did hear feedback on the issue of political parties, which is why it's very narrow. It's just in Calgary and Edmonton, which is the place, quite frankly, where they're already running slates. Whether they're open about it and open about the connections or not, they're running slates. And so we felt that in Calgary and Edmonton in particular, we needed to create some rules and transparency around that. When it comes to the issue of that I just mentioned about bylaws, we would use that sparingly, but I did give a couple of examples of where we have felt we had to step in the past.
And follow up on a different subject, your thoughts on BC backing off on the decriminalization?
Well, I mean, I think it's unfortunate that it had to come to the point that it did for them to realize that it had gone too far. Frontline nurses were experiencing terrible working conditions. I think that was probably the catalyst. They realized that having open drug use in parks and playgrounds was not appropriate, and they found that their hands were tied in being able to roll it back themselves. And so I would say that we've taken a different approach in Alberta. We have a recovery-oriented system of care. We believe recovery is possible, and it should be what we're aiming for, while we continue to provide some of these safe consumption sites, as well as providing virtual opioid dependency. We're going to be, through our Canadian Center for Recovery Excellence, we're hoping to be able to get some good evidence about why our approach is the one that others should follow. So we're watching what's happening in BC. We hope that it helps to stem the tide of these drugs going into the market, but I don't know that anything they've announced so far is going to stop that problem, so it remains an active concern for us.
And we'll take one more here from the room before going to the phones.
Tyson Fedor with CTV. Premier, just back to today's announcement in regards to commuter rail, and the minister might be able to touch on this as well. We've heard, as Adam mentioned off the top, a lot of ideas over the last 10 years. We've seen a lot of private companies get involved to try to look at this as well. When you talk about the list in order of what you want to see commuter rail being maybe the most feasible at this point, what does that look like? And when we get to maybe a finish line, what are we looking at for costs when it comes to someone wanting to take that train?
Well, I would say that the starting point for me is looking at Union Station in Toronto. And if anyone has been to Union Station, that you might want to just get some viz so that you can see what the vision has been there, looking at a commuter rail and passenger rail system that has developed out over now probably 50 years. And so part of it involves the GO train, part of it involves a Via Rail service, which is their transnational rail line. Part of it involves integration with the subway system, and part of it involves bus routes so that small communities can be served by bus. And it is all integrated in a single entity where people can go in, their shopping centers, and it's kind of a gathering point. That is, I think, to understand why it is we felt we needed to step in and create a master plan, is that collection point, that central station, is something I think only we can do, because there's just so many different players that have to be involved in that. And if we can begin with working on some of the easier parts, I mean, I think the airport line is probably the easiest one to do, since so much of it has already been scoped out. And then the feasibility plan will tell us how to stage the rest of it. Let me hand it over to Mr. Dreeshen.
Yeah, no, I would say obviously when the existing LRT networks that we have in the province, obviously they're municipally led with Edmonton and Calgary. So obviously going into Edmonton and Calgary with a downtown stop, with the airport connection of any type of passenger rail or commuter rail, that's where, as Premier mentioned, we needed to have this province-wide overview. And so that study of partnering with the municipalities all along the way is something that hasn't been done before, of the different types of trains that will all be connected. So I'm looking forward to this review. I know a lot of the costing questions will come out in the feasibility study, the costing of this request for expression of interest, that will hopefully have some more answers within a year. And then again, that will set the groundwork for any private sector component, any regional rail proponent wanting to set up shop here in Alberta. They'll at least know the rules of the game, and then we'll be able to start connecting these pieces together.
And Premier, finally, just back to Bill 20 here. We've heard from the mayor here in this city, we've heard from councillors up in Edmonton using words like threatening, intimidation, and authoritarian about this bill. What goes through your mind when you hear these politicians saying this?
Well, look, there have been instances over the last 18 months where members of the left have asked us to remove council members. And there isn't a mechanism to do that. And I don't know in the future when there might be a cause for a province to step in to remove a council member, but that's what we were mindful of, is that this is something that everyone was asking for at one point about 18 months ago. There is also a need as well, I think, to give some clarity around the fact that we intend to defend our jurisdiction. From a provincial point of view, I think that I should maybe mention this, because I have mandate letters that I gave to all of my ministers and then rewrote them again when I got reelected. And in the Minister of Municipal Affairs, he was directed in his mandate letter to, in collaboration with the Minister of Justice, review the Local Authorities Election Act and make recommendations for any necessary amendments to strengthen public trust in and the integrity of our municipal election laws. So that was his direction, and this is what he has come back with. He was also directed to protect the province's constitutional right to oversee the governance of Alberta's municipalities without federal interference. And I also included a number of mandate items related to rail for the Minister of Transportation. That's led us to the announcement today. So I would say that the process that we go through as a government is that we listen and we watch for emerging issues. And if we find that we don't have mechanisms to deal with them in legislation, that we create those mechanisms. But it's only going to be, as the Minister of Municipal Affairs said, in the case of very extreme circumstances where he would feel a need that he had to step in based on circumstances or overwhelming public demand. So that is just in response to some of the things that we've heard in the last couple of years.
Thanks, Tyson. We have time for a couple more questions. We're going to head to the phones first here. Operator, could you put through our first caller, please?
Kelly Carterman, Globe and Mail. Hi there. Thank you for taking my question. On Bill 20, just to follow up, the concern that municipalities have expressed about the reach of the bill, it reminds me of the concern that you have expressed about federal reach, including when we're talking about electricity regulation. The federal government has it in their law that someone could go to jail if they breach the clean electricity regulations. They've said we'll never do that. How are municipalities to know that this will only be used in the most extreme of circumstances?
Well, I would say that we're in a bit of a different situation, because the Constitution of our country recognizes two orders of government, the federal government and the provincial government, as well as recognizing Indigenous governments. But they have said that municipalities get their legislated authority from the the provincial level of government. What we've observed is that the federal government is attempting to do a variety of workarounds to get their agenda passed, which may be in conflict to what it is that we want to do as a province. And so we are taking every mechanism that we need to make sure that we're asserting that the federal government has to talk with us when it comes to supporting municipalities or talking about policy change in municipalities. That's what also Bill 18 was about. So I would just say they're sort of different mandates. In fact, that the Constitution doesn't have a specific constitutional mandate for municipalities other than to say they're the responsibility of the province.
And did you have a follow-up, Kelly?
I did, thank you. And on the announcement today, Premier, much of your political career has been about fiscal responsibility. We are talking about projects here that will cost billions of dollars, if not tens of billions of dollars. What are you going to do to ensure that this agency doesn't get itself involved in contracts that will later be called boondoggles or lead to budget increases that won't be tenable years from now?
Well, I think this is part of the reason why we're doing a feasibility plan. We know that some infrastructure is very expensive. Just look at the LRT line for the Green Line, which is, I think, gone to $10 billion, and it's only half of how it was scoped. And so we understand that these kinds of projects are very capital intensive, and that it requires coordination. But the other side of it is how many billions of dollars would we spend if we had to create 6 and 8 and 10 lane highways along these routes that we're proposing. So that'll be scoped out with the feasibility study so that we have an understanding of what we would be in for. Plus, we want to leverage our private sector partners as much as we possibly can. If we can create a provincial initiative that will solve some of the choke points coming into the downtowns, as well as solving the issue of a station, and then it allows for them to be able to use our infrastructure so that they can run a line, then I think that we can have a good partnership where we can help defray the cost. Let me turn it over to Minister Dreeshen.
The Premier nailed it on the feasibility study will obviously be the critical point in a cost-benefit analysis. So we will have that comparison of road to rail, what it looks like, making some future projections of what the next 15 plus years are going to look like in the province. So having an efficient transportation network, no matter where you are in the world, is something that would be the main goal. And how best to achieve that is why we're taking the time to plan these studies so that we will have something that all Albertans can be proud of at the end of the day.
Thanks, Kelly. Operator, could you put through our next caller, please?
Rick Bell, Post Media.
Good afternoon, Premier. I was just rereading a column from 2007 that spoke glowingly of commuter rail and had interviews of the mayor of Cochrane and the mayor of Airdrie, and people were pointing to Union stations and all of these in these outlying cities, and it sounded so exciting. That was, 16 and a half years ago. Pardon me for being skeptical, but we keep having these train stories from then till now. How can we, are you really serious about this? I mean, is this, I realize the population has grown, but people talked about that back in 2007 in the middle of a boom, and nothing ended up happening. So how can we be assured this is not just sort of the usual, here we go again, trains on the agenda, and not something really serious? What makes it different this time?
Well, I think one of the things I would observe is that we were asking, I think, the wrong level of government to lead the conversation on this. That I think there was a hope that the city of Calgary would be able to build out the LRT to different municipalities, and you have to ask the question of why would the city of Calgary be motivated to spend that much money building out to the outlying communities when it's not their tax base. And so when you've got these intermunicipal issues, it seems to me that that's the very definition of when the province has to step in to be able to help. So that would be perhaps one of the differences. In Vancouver, they made a different choice with TransLink to be able to create a separate entity that does their transportation infrastructure. But in Ontario, they did a Metrolinx, which is an Ontario Crown Corporation. So when we were looking at the best way of trying to achieve this target, it seemed to me that the Ontario Metrolinx model was the best way for us to be looking at it and to take that lead role. So I think that that's part of it, is that you need to have a couple of things. Number one, provincial commitment, so that it can have the broad range of use, so that you're not dealing with different municipalities feeling like they've got to carry the water for another municipality. I think that's our job. But I guess the other part is having a Crown Corporation or an independent agency so that it can withstand the test of time. If this is a 15-year project, you're going to have changes of government that happen over that period of time, and you want to be able to maintain the momentum to be able to achieve the target. So maybe that's different, is that we've sort of reimagined how the governance would work. Plus, we're also very open to having the private sector collaborate with us so that we can build out certain parts of the line without it being 100% on the public sector tax dollar. Let me turn it over to Dreeshen to see if he has anything else.
Sure. I just say, Rick, on the seriousness, we are serious. The Premier put in my mandate letter, and in my department, Transportation Economic Corridors, we're planning. We're thinking about it. I think it would be very easy just to throw money at a proponent that walks by and says, okay, let's start building trains in Alberta. But we're actually taking the time to develop what a province-wide network could be and do that feasibility study and cost analysis to really understand it versus just jumping in with a new government announcement.
And if I can ask a supplementary question.
Yeah.
You talked about big dreams. I've been around long enough to know that the Alberta government in the past, when they were trying to get out of the business of business, also was the province of big boondoggles. How can you assure Alberta Premier, anytime there's these big dollars floating around, even the talk of them, there have been many problems in the past with other projects, and the Green Line LRT is already could be considered a boondoggle in terms of the amount of money compared to what people thought it would be. How can we be assured that when you see the feasibility study and everything else, we won't be looking back 10 or 15 years from now and saying this is yet another example of a boondoggle where a Alberta government with money got in trouble with it?
Well, look, I mean, I think what you'll see is that's why we've separated it into 6 different projects, is that some of them are feasible right now, some may be more feasible in a few years from now, and some may be feasible further out. And I think that's the difference, is that you've got to do what makes sense based on our current population. Look, I look at transportation infrastructure as being core government business. This is why people elect governments, is to do the things that they can't do in the private sector. And that includes building massive new infrastructure that connects cities and requires this kind of major investment in order to be able to alleviate the commuter traffic, be able to promote tourism, be able to increase the business travel. This is all essential work that government does. I mean, we have a $8 billion a year capital budget. And so I don't look at any of that as being frivolous spending. I look at that as being kind of essential spending for government. And this is one of those areas where we've now grown to a size where I think that this falls into that same category.
Yeah, I'd hate to speculate on boondoggles, but I think maybe back in the 50s when the social creditors were talking about a ring road around Calgary, people might have thrown out that B word. And also when Lougheed actually started buying up the land for the ring road, it took a long time to see large infrastructure projects actually pay back and have dividends and actually build out a province that is world-class and people can move around efficiently. So I know it is a big, long, many decade-long vision that we're looking at here, but it is something when it talks to transportation infrastructure, not just because I'm the transportation minister, but we spend $3.3 billion a year in roads, bridges, and trying to find ways to best move people around this great province, and it's something that we'll continue to do.
Thank you, Rick, and that's all the time we have for questions today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us.